going to be able to teach on the word today. I ask that you touch the hearts of those that hear it. That you touch the way you touched my heart in preparing this. Thank you in your son's name, Yeshua. Amen. Amen. This Torah portion is actually the beginning of Leviticus, and Vayikra is the Hebrew name that starts off with this Torah portion. The full Torah portion is actually means he is, he has called. For the second Aliyah, we're going to be focusing on Leviticus starting from chapters 1 through verse 14 through chapter 2:6. Since this is also starting off the book of Leviticus, I wanted to take a little moment to diverge, and I was going to do something a little different. In the past, I've actually focused and read through the actual verses, but felt like this was an opportunity to be able to bring about some key points about the Torah portion and focusing on that, because that's where it felt like God was kind of drawing me. Since we're not going to be reading the verses, I encourage each of you to go home tonight and actually read the full Torah portion. This portion for this Aliyah is focusing on the continuation from the first one, and that is an ascent offering and also a grain offering. So let's let the journey begin. For most readers, the book of Leviticus is a little bit of a difficult read, and it's probably because the first two books, Genesis and Exodus, were narrative in their context and their construct. But Leviticus is more instructional and can be a little bit choppy to read, and so it makes it a little bit different. So I want to actually speak a little bit to the book of Leviticus. There's a language to Leviticus. It may actually surprise you. And it's actually from a Hebraic mindset and not a Western one. Any language has a single purpose, and that is to communicate, to convey ideas, thoughts, desires, concerns, wants, needs, feelings, and even boundaries. So if you approach studying Leviticus like learning a language, what does that look like? Instead of nouns, verbs, adjectives, clauses, adverbs, we now have a language of people. We have places, we have sin, we have animals, we have actions. Just like a language, they're arranged and they're combined in various ways to say something in order to communicate and convey a purpose. In a nutshell, in its most simple form, that is the language of Leviticus. So to touch on the what of Leviticus, I'd like to focus on the why. There's a beauty here that most of the Christian churches fail to see, and it was never about just following a bunch of rules or being legalistic in our relationship with God. If they truly understood it, they would never have said that. The why of Leviticus comes down to this very simple matter. It is the Holy Father's answer to a simple man, so that the simple man can draw close to a Holy Father. That's Leviticus in a nutshell. All it was meant to be was a place and a means of reestablishing relationship. And the fall of the garden broke that relationship, and yet the Father's been relentless in giving us an opportunity to be reconciled to Him and reestablish that relationship. Leviticus is a key part of that. Despite the fall of man, He knew this was going to happen all along because He's timeless. Because He is timeless, and He knew this, He still chose to have a relationship with us, and He did everything He could to make that possible. So the whole Levitical system, that entire system, our language, testifies to God's holiness and His life, and the sinful nature that can lead to our death, only if we choose to. Again, it's about relationship. So with that in mind, let's take a look at this week's Torah portion through the lens of the Levitical language. I love this part of the Torah portion because it sets us first step at understanding. It starts off with worship, and I actually very much enjoyed Elder Mike's message that he provided 2 weeks ago, where he's talking about the differences between praise and worship. Praise is celebratory, but worship is intimate. And Leviticus starts off with a form of worship. So the image that you see on the screen is actually the same one, top and bottom, but I've highlighted something important. Our title word, Vayikra, is, the whole word is highlighted in red at the top, but you'll notice that, reading it from right to left, the very last letter is an aleph, but it's diminished. And the very next word following it also has an aleph, but it's normal size. You won't find this in our English translations. You'll see this in a Torah scroll though. And the diminished aleph in our Torah portion actually is a visual clue. It's what's also referred to as what they call jots and tittles. This is a tittle. This is a modification of the letter. You actually can see it happening again with the word below. There's a little like a star or crown on the letter. These things are significant in providing a deeper understanding of what we're trying to study. But in this case, the diminished aleph actually represents humility. We'll go into this a little bit deeper as to why it's important to keep that in the back of your mind as far as the humility part. To give you a little background, the first Aliyah starts off with these two verses, and it's where Moses is being called by God from the tent of meeting to give instruction to his people. This is the beginning of Leviticus. And I'd like to focus on a key word that tends to lose meaning in its English form, and it's called a scent offering. And you'll see that in the second verse. And it's also voluntary. A scent offering actually comes from the word olah, and that means burnt offering. And it's a little different in terms of how the offering is actually handled. This particular one is actually totally and completely consumed in fire. Unlike other offerings, they're treated or handled differently. But the burnt offering, being consumed entirely, there's a deeper meaning to it. From a Hebrew context, the offering is being entirely consumed, and also being voluntary is symbolizing something entirely different than a lot of the other offerings, and that is because it's voluntary. He's saying, when you want to give to God, this is how you want to go about doing it in Leviticus. It's an act from the heart. It's an act of worship. It symbolizes the entire consumption of fire and complete dedication and surrender to God because it was voluntary. Keep in mind that I've used the word surrender, because that's what we do when we move into a place of worship. We're surrendering ourselves out of love to Him. So Yeshua paved the way for the Father when the veil was torn, separating us from the Father. So in the spirit of what Elder Mike had talked about with praise, and God deserves great praise, what He also desires most from our hearts is worship. And sincere worship comes from a place of humility. That's where Vayikra, with the diminished aleph, is trying to symbolize, coming from. It's voluntary, it's from the heart, and it's with humility. So, despite things you may have heard in the past about Leviticus, the thing that is neat about Leviticus is that it's all about relationship. And it's about God trying to provided means before his son had come to be able to have that kind of close relationship with him. Should watch him.